And here comes the 905, a little bit late as usual. And on the footplate, like as not, we'll encounter Anthea Hanscombe. Engine driver's hat on her head, coal shovel in her hand, two big smuts on her cheeks and a beatific smile on her face. Mike Hanscombe, Anthea's son, wrote in to tell us about Anthea's deep and enduring love for anything that goes chuff and belches. Now in her mid-80s, she's known wherever piston is spoken as the steaming Granny, and I, lucky boy, had the honour and immense pleasure of chatting with her when she came into our Luton studio. We began at the beginning with steamrollers.
I thought they were the most wonderful beasts, I really did. If ever they were tarring roads anywhere nearby, and I was suffering a little bit from asthma, I would have to go out and I would have to walk along breathing in the tar fumes.
And this was when you had your first encounter with the steamroller?
And that was when I had my first encounter with a beautiful Aveling & Porter steamroller.
Describe an Aveling & Porter to us. I'm not a steamroller buff.
You're not a steamroller. They were beautiful things. Yes, the smell is absolutely gorgeous. And they were powerful, very powerful. They sounded so nice, too. Well, at least to me they did.
When you grew up, you had more encounters with steam machines.
I did indeed.
During the Second World War?
During the Second World War, I worked on a local farm. And in the summertime, we did contract work round with the threshing tackle. So there I was with my beloved steam again. The smell of it and the beat of it, and it's just lovely. It's a living thing.
It must have been an unusual thing at that time. Your friends must have all been far more interested in Clark Gable and beginning the Beguine and things.
Yes, because it's not many women that are passionately fond of steam.
No, a lot of men.
Oh, yes.
Men love them.
It is.
What sort of age were you when you learned how to fire an engine?
I think, hang on a minute, I think I was 54, 52.
A slip of the thing, then.
54, something like that.
Hardly old enough to pick up the shovel.
And after my first firing turn, I arrived back home with so many bruises that I didn't dare let my husband into the bathroom the same time as me, whatever happened.
Have you learned to drive as well?
Yes, I have learnt to drive, but firing is more interesting.
Is it? Why?
Because you have got to balance the fire, the water, you've got to have the right pressure for the driver all the time.
What's your most memorable experience?
The best of all was the race from Euston Station to Watford Junction. That was a most wonderful journey. It was during the build-up for D-Day, and I caught the local to Bletchley, which left Euston at 10 minutes past 3. Sitting the far side was a nun, and opposite her a Chinese gentleman. Nobody else in the carriage.
We've got the opening of a Graham Greene novel here, I think.
Well, it was lovely. We set off. I'd got a magazine, and I sat reading it, and I thought to myself suddenly, there's a sound of something large and heavy coming along beside us. And I listened to this and thought, my God, there's something working hard. And a beautiful, filthy, absolutely filthy, dirty, great big engine overtook us, pulling a troop train, packed, absolutely packed to the lid. And this thing went heaving and puffing past us, leaking all over the place.
What was leaking? What was leaking?
Well, it was leaking from the cylinder cocks at the front. It had got a little puff of steam from your cylinder cocks. It had got piston valves leaking a bit. And at the back of the engine, the injector overflow pipe, a little steam from that.
So it wasn't in the best of condition, but it was still keeping up a tremendous speed.
Oh, God, it was going like yes. And it disappeared, and I thought, well, that's it. And then there was this lovely tug that one gets as our train started to accelerate, and a race began, and we went at neck and neck. Sometimes we were in front, sometimes they were in front, sometimes we were side by side. We shot through Harrow and Wealdstone, which is an island platform, with startled passengers as these two things went by easily at 60 miles an hour, just clean through. And the soldiers, of course, were all leaning out and waving, and the Americans at the back were waving to them, and the noise from the noise from the passengers was lovely. And the nun never stopped counting her rosary, and the Chinese gentleman allowed a little little flicker of a grin in the corner. Anyhow, then we reached bushy water troughs, and at this point we were absolutely neck and neck. We were running level, and the first coach was completely plastered with water, which of course always happens, but the guard had not been able to get along the train to close the windows, and those poor soldiers in that first coach and half the second coach were drenched, absolutely drenched, and they were struggling to get the windows up, and they'd got this jet of water that went along. Oh, it was hysterically funny. I must admit, we were all of us were laughing by then. But at that point, we had to slow down because we had to cross over all the lines to get into Watford Junction, you see. So she just went storming ahead, and that was it. And I hopped out of the train, and I thought, I'll just walk up to the engine and say what a brilliant and exciting run it was, when a tall figure came out of the station master's office and walked across the platform, and I thought, I don't think this is the moment to do that.
What's the worst engine you've ever driven?
Oh, no, they've all been lovely, the ones I've driven. I've enjoyed driving those. The worst I've fired on is a very different matter. That is the BT Well tank at Quainton, an beautiful-looking engine, ancient thing, with the most horrible injectors, and I had a terrible time firing her. She was an old and difficult engine, and because her boiler was old, they had also got her safety valve lifting light, which meant that you'd get a nice fire going, and she promptly started blowing off. So, no, I didn't enjoy BT.
You had a bit of a treat for your 80th birthday, didn't you?
Oh, I did. I drove Flying Scotsman, my favourite engine.
And
yes,
how was that? How was Flying Scotsman? Is she sweet?
Oh, she was gorgeous, was Flying Scotsman, with a screw reverser, not a reversing lever, but a screw reverser. I did have a slightly stiff arm after that. Beautiful engine. She's lovely. She is gorgeous.
The equally gorgeous Anthea Steaming Hanscombe. It could go on forever, but